decide you want to go too crazy. So the first question we're going to start you guys with, where do you stand on changes for home-produced solar power?
Home-produced?
I go first. We just had a bill in the legislature, last legislature, that failed, and it's a result. The reason we needed a bill is the PUC had changed net metering that we used to. The homeowner could get 100% of their credit back for the energy they created. PUC changed that. There was a bill proposed to change it back so that if you have solar on your roof and you put it out to the grid in the summer and then in the winter you want to get it back, you get all of it back. And they changed it, so the PUC changed it so it's tapering down like 90%, and then over the next year, I guess it is, and ultimately down to just 50%. So I would put it back the way it was, where if you're a homeowner, if you put it out on the grid, you should get it back.
Wasn't part of the tax it also when you came back? Part of the bill was to tax the solar power that you make, to tax it. So that's like saying if you grow a vegetable garden and you want to pick your own tomatoes, we're going to tax you for picking your tomato and eating a salad. Like if we don't start taking alternative energy seriously, and I think all of us agree on this, but we should invest one more penny in dirty energy. Not one more penny. We have plenty of alternatives that are economical, that can grow our economy, that are excellent for the state, renewable. We don't need to do it anymore. And what's the reason that we don't do it? Money.
We can wait. I'm sorry.
No,
We can do this on an economic argument too. You look at every state in the country that has lowest taxes, lowest energy costs. The common denominator, they produce energy. Now, they're old economy energy. You've got your coal, you've got your oil. The future of this country, future of energy production is renewables. And we can be the first state to be 100% renewable generation state, especially with the storage technologies that we have now. Both Jim and Betsy are absolutely right. Net metering should have never been brought up. We should have continued on with it, but we need a comprehensive energy policy in this state to grow jobs as well.
The other thing we have to be concerned about is that we have to keep an eye on what Trump plans to do as far as talk about putting tariffs on different countries. He puts the tariff, or raises the tariff on Mexico, and a good number of our solar panels comes from Mexico. He does that, shuts off that supply of solar panels. We stand to lose something like 88,000 jobs, and right now the solar industry provides about 27% of the new jobs in the United States.
I think we're all for solar energy. I think who is appointed to the PUC is critically important. This PUC has been back and forth on net metering. Their proposal for 10 act in phasing out net metering over the next 10 years is flawed. We have to expand community solar and expand the benefits of residential solar. I think we're all for renewable energy sources. You look at Germany and other countries who are at similar latitudes as we are, they have 100 times more solar panels at least than we have in the state of Maine. It is an economic boom, it is an energy saving measure, and it's good for the people of the state.
You know, when John Baldacci was president, Governor. I appreciate that. We were on target we were the clean energy state. We were the model, and people were moving here and building businesses here, both in terms of the wind power, and there's a wind farm not far from here, but also in terms of solar. And as soon as Governor LePage came into office, he started attacking clean energy. He really put the kibosh to the economy, and it's not just about the economy, but it was one of the fastest growing sectors. We have the opportunity to do solar. We need to make sure that we continue weatherizing people's homes so that we are insulated from the oil prices, and we need to continue, insulated. And we also need to continue making sure that we're expanding our renewable portfolio standard. The higher our renewable portfolio standard, the more renewable energy that we're able to put on the grid here in Maine. And we are a national exporter of energy. We need to make sure that we continue to grow that and not import it from Quebec.
Okay, awesome question. All right, real quick though, I did not have any order or anything, so everybody's cooperated really well. I would probably throw a round of applause at these guys for being.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I was immediately little nervous that was going to all crumble in front of me, so thank you very much.
One thing I just want to say all of us agree on is whichever one of us wins in June, we are all going to come together and support that person so that Democrats...
All right, so our next question, and I'll start on this side this time, maybe with Janet, if that's all right.
Take a vote on that.
No, this is a dictatorship temporarily. So will you support, or how will you support union workers' rights? And will you support furthering their agenda to lift up all workers, supporting pensions, health care, and benefits?
Yeah, you know, as Attorney General, I've participated in briefs in the U.S. Supreme Court protecting fair share measures and opposing so-called right-to-work legislation. I've opposed at the state level, opposed at the national level. Yes, I support unions. Of course, I support unions. The right to collectively bargain is critical to lifting up the income and the well-being of all Maine families, whether you're directly affected, whether you have a union member in your family, or whether your neighbor or your churchgoer, your friends are union members. It lifts all of us up. I lived through the year-and-a-half strike in J, the IP&J. There's never a greater disaster in the state of Maine than that long strike. And we're still seeing the after effects of that strike and that union busting action. John Patrick knows about it. We all, those of us who were there, still suffer the after effects of it. We support unions. I support unions, collective bargaining at every level.
I'm Diane, and absolutely when, back in 2011, when the world shifted in a direction that we didn't like, some protests, minor ones, erupted in Wisconsin, and I saw early on that was probably what was going to come to Maine with those right-to-work bills. I went and drove through 3 snowstorms with a few friends of mine, and went to Wisconsin to stand in solidarity with the workers there and to learn what it was that they were going through. And sure enough, and the governor and I had a nationwide back and forth fight that was really funny. And then when he took down the labor wall, the labor mural, I made sure that story went viral. A lot of people probably don't know that I pushed that out to make sure. And then the same thing with the child labor laws. When he came after child labor laws and tried to make it easier for workers to force their kids to work more often, which would have impacted their ability to get educated, I was the one who made sure that story got out there so that we could tamp it down and stop it. And that's exactly what I'll continue to do.
I'm also a strong union supporter. I come from a strong union family. My grandfather, my father, my wife, my brother, my cousin Jody was in the Fairpoint strike for 131 days. Yes, I share the same views on collective bargaining, right to work. The unions have been really hit hard in this country and in this state in the last several years, and it happens at the same time that you're seeing the middle class eroding. And I think that there's a strong similarity between that, because it's the unions that have made sure that folks have reasonable wages and good benefits, and I'm a strong supporter of it.
Me too. I have been a very strong supporter of unions from day one, and worked very strongly in the Zero Goal Alliance with AFL-CIO. The first thing I ever did when I got to the State House was work with Chick O'Leary and the AFL-CIO to raise the minimum wage a dime under a Democratic governor. But, one thing I just want to say is, in the right-to-work laws, which are so devastating, we now have a governor who is using an incredible false choice to try and make our state workers choose between a right-to-work law and an increase. One of the reasons I'm running is because I walked into the State House one day, and every state worker I saw was walking like that. So demoralized. When I started my career, if you were a state worker, that was a fun job. You had good benefits. That was a good thing to get. And now we've been so demoralized by all of the attacks and the no pay raise for years. All the little things that they've done in this administration to demoralize the union and to demoralize the workers, so that now they're asking the state workers to decide: do you want a 6% pay increase if you give up if you agree to right to work law, or do you want a 1% increase for the AFSCME and the others who are saying no to right to work? It's a false choice. And so we can't allow not only those right to work laws, but we can't allow those false choices to be made. We need to stand up and say, that is not the choice. Workers have a right to unionize, we have a right to union workplaces, union shops, and that's how we are, in fact, going to protect the middle class and grow the middle class. And we ought to start unionizing fast food and service sectors as well.
I support unions. I served in the state senate and I sat right in front of John Patrick. I want to be clear up front that I learned. I'm referring to him because I did have a lot of conversations, not in the chamber, but outside the chamber. We had right to work legislation in front of us in the Senate. And so I would talk to John and Troy Jackson because I knew that they were leaders and I needed to learn from them, and I did learn from them. I'm a small business owner. I don't have union employees. But I was a Teamsters member in the 1970s when I worked in a grocery store. My great-grandfather that I mentioned earlier was the first president of the Machinist Union in that great northern war. My mother was a union school teacher for her full career to the age of 65. And you talk about the reason unions work and why they're valuable and why I support them. Imagine that this room was a building and we all worked in it. You guys all worked for me. And one at a time, I took you outside and talked about your raise and here's how it's going to be. And then we came back in. I would probably have the authority in that dynamic, correct? Suppose I took all of you at once and I stood up here and you guys all were going to talk together to me. That's the basic concept. It's not exactly how it was explained to me, but that's basically how we work as people and as a society, as a culture. So unions, it's people banding together in community like I talked about earlier. That's how they derive and can have some power against the big corporate interest who really controls almost all of the other power decisions as owners and corporate shareholders. So that's why unions matter, and that's why I support them.
I started out my union activities at about, I think I was about 7 years old. My mother worked in a paper bag company that produced the paper bags of potato chips. And they went on strike, and the only place they could afford to get a place to meet was in a Mexican neighborhood. Next door was a Mexican movie house. And my mother was a single parent, and so as a result, I learned how to speak Mexican next door. You know, I was sitting there watching these Mexican movies. But through the years, I've been a member of Local 8. I was an iron worker. I was a member of the Boyle Union. I've been a member of the 138 Hot Carriers Union. That's how I got through graduate school and through undergraduate. I support unions because for the same reason that they became strong in the 50s, when they had no child labor laws and kids were working in foundries and so forth. Along came the Eisenhart in the 50s, and unions became strong, and the nation prospered, and people could have one parent at home. The family came together. So as a result, paying lousy wages is lousy economics. Ask John way back there. We were talking about that just before. In Millinocket, in Jay, and those other places, property values go down if you can have union workers and you have industry. Okay? That's the idea that unions are economy breakers or anything like that. Unions are economy builders. They're family builders. And that's why I support unions.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go on to another question. You guys have been pretty good on time. Just keep an eye on me, all right? I don't want to have to give anybody the look. So the next question, I'm just going popcorn in my head, and I realize that doesn't probably seem fair, but we're going to actually start with Diane. I'm going to try to give you all one question to start with. So how will you reduce property taxes?
All right. Well, first and foremost, I'd love to give my kid down here a round of applause because he is such a trooper. The poor guy is like sneezing and he's trying not to fall asleep. So my last term, I served on the taxation committee, and one of the fastest ways to reduce property taxes is to raise the revenue sharing back up to where it should be. The second fastest way is to reinstate the 3% surcharge that was stolen from us when we passed it at the ballot box and the legislature repealed it. That 3% would have gone to fund education. It is long overdue that we stop pitting elderly residents against students who are trying to go to school. Because, I'm sorry. Go for it. You know, we have schools that are crumbling everywhere. Where I grew up, right down the street, There was an elementary school that I went to, Woodstock Elementary, and everybody was terrified that if a match had hit it, it would have gone up and ignited overnight, in a matter of minutes. When they built the new school, I was in the first class to graduate from it, right down the street from where I live, and it was a whole different educational experience. We need to make sure that we stop pitting the elderly residents who are struggling with property taxes against the students who do need an education. They are our future. We need to make sure that the rich are paying their fair share. So if you're looking for a candidate that's going to make sure that the rich get to do whatever they want and continue to offshore their money, vote for someone else. This is not what I'm going to do. I want to make sure they pay their fair share and we reinstate that 3% tax.
We're going this way.
What do you guys want?
You're pretty good self-regulating. Go, Janet.
Expand the homestead exemption, bring back the circuit breaker for people with low incomes and renters as well, and fully fund our schools with state funds.
So now it's me. Okay. Yes. Getting confused with it. I agree. Circuit breaker, homestead exemption. I was on the Sanford School Committee when Governor LePage was cutting the revenue sharing. We saw this. Everybody that served in local politics has seen this. We had $1.4 million cut out of a $30 million school budget, and we had to either increase property taxes or we had to lay off teachers, and we ended up doing a little of both. We had to cut sports for the junior high. We didn't rehire teachers. What else did we do? We cut some arts programs. This has happened throughout the entire state. Everybody's been crippled by this. And when you see the 3% happen, it's because people are tired of it. People are absolutely tired of it in their communities. So we want to fund our schools. We want to fund our local areas that are important to us, and we are pitting everybody against one another, and it's wrong. And it's happened because our governor has cut revenue sharing in the state, so that's absolutely the best way to start.
So, what they said, all what they said, but I think it really is important to, one, not just do the revenue share, obviously revenue sharing, but the tax exemptions that are available to people, homestead and property tax exemption, a lot of people don't even know about that. So in addition to having them, I talk to people in my community who are already eligible, and they don't know about it. So we not only have to have those programs available, we have to actually talk to people and do some education for people about what they are eligible for, especially our elderly folks who often don't know it, are too proud to ask for help or to know that they have help available. So I think that's one other thing that I can add. And I do absolutely agree that we have got to get to a system of taxation that is fair. Property taxation is not a progressive tax. It is not a fair tax. It keeps people who inherit property, who have lived in homes forever. They can't do it. My family's from North Haven Island down in Penobscot Bay. There is almost no islanders. My grandfather had to sell his house because he couldn't afford the taxation. So we have got to figure out how to do a taxation system that's fair and that starts with people at the top paying their fair share.
Well, yes, all of the above, Adam. Original question back to how do we reduce property taxes? Of course, the property tax system statewide is basically sales, income, and property tax, the three legs of the stool. A couple things I would do. First, I would actually go in and evaluate corporate tax loopholes and all the other tax loopholes in a way that makes them have to face the same music that the average taxpayer in the town has to face. I know we all look at, not we, but the legislature in the past has looked at the tax loopholes and we all talk about that term. But as Betsy has talked about, big money comes in, where they go is to that taxation committee to stop that process. So if I'm governor, they're not going to be able to go to this tax committee and stop that process because I'm going to be the governor and I'm not going to let them. So that's going to happen on corporate tax loopholes. And and the other thing is that I'm a small business owner. What we need to do is continue the growth of the economy so that we have more overall income tax. That's why, even though they cut the 3% school surcharge out, the reason we still had the $160 million or so was growth in the economy. Essentially, there was revenue there to pull from. We need to, and I want to be able to continue to grow the economy so there's more revenue from corporate and personal income tax.
My approach would be twofold. Since the Reagan administration we've had reductions in the estate tax. Governor LePage in this state advocated for complete elimination on the $1 million estates. They've reduced dividend tax, reduced capital gains tax, and all those taxes. That's the first thing. The other thing is that we can decide whether we're going to have a nickel or dime operation, or we're going to have world-class education, or we're going to have whatever, world-class services for our elderly, or whatever. The way we do that, and the only way that I've seen in my lifetime that that's happened, is when there have been good-paying jobs, job creation, like Jim was talking about earlier, acrylics and so forth. I'm for hemp industry and hemp manufacturing, producing new jobs. Because where you've had those paper mills in the past, John was telling me earlier that 84% of the tax base was paid by those paper mills, okay, and now it's down to 40. But that's the way we reduce on individuals, particularly the elderly, the property tax, by bringing in new business, and creating new business and new jobs, good-paying jobs.
Great. All right. So we are we're more than halfway there. Next question. I'm going to go ahead and start with Betsy. We'll go quick. So Betsy, so what are your thoughts on making Social Security available to educators and state employees who retire with credits to MSBA as well as Social Security?
So that's a great question, and it's a big problem we face here in Maine when you have a whole separate system for people in the state versus Social Security. And unfortunately, it has made it vulnerable to the state then messing with it, if you will. And now we know the federal government is trying to mess with the Federal Social Security Act as well. But so I think we have got to look at a system that says, if you paid in, you get it back. We have to know that it's protected, and we can't always go to retirement funds as the bank, frankly, where we take stuff out and we're looking at people and the contract and the agreement that we made with people, then we can renege on it. Once people are elderly, once people are already using that system, that is not a fair system. So we've got to figure out a way to make those retirement systems whole and to keep them sacred and honor those. And I think a new conversation maybe needs to happen between state employees and teachers and Social Security and say, where do we get the place that is the most secure and the place that is not going to be rated by either state government or by the federal government. So I think those conversations, and the way to do it is we have to ask the people that are involved and bring them to the table, not have politicians who aren't involved at all and have them make the solutions.
Pensions, and who also have worked in the private sector. My mom keeps asking me about this all the time. She's like, when are you going to fix this? It's actually a federal law. Maine is one of only a small number of states that did not get grandfathered in. So basically what it means is that you work in the private sector and you earn your Social Security, and then you go work for the state and you earn your retirement benefits, your pension benefits. Well, normally in a normal world, you get both because they're both earned benefits. In Maine, you only, for every dollar you get from the state benefit, they take it away from the Social Security and vice versa. So it's really a problem for people it's a real problem for people, for us recruiting good talent to be state workers, because for every dollar they earn in their pension, they're going to lose money in their Social Security. Right. That's a real problem, but it is a federal fix that has to happen. Our delegation has been fighting for it for years. We're going to have to continue fighting for it, but that is a federal issue.
There are 11 states that have a so-called pension offset in federal law because of the nature of their state pensions, which apply to teachers as well. It does require a federal fix. It's been a long-standing problem. You lose about 2/3 of your Social Security benefit if you have a teacher's or state employee pension, even if you work 25 years in the Social Security system. It is extremely unfair. It does require a federal fix.
I think that in the military, for example, I was on active duty in the Army, and I was on active duty in the Coast Guard. But a good portion of my Coast Guard career was in reserve. Okay, as a reservist, I was drawing pension, and also as a businessman in my own business for 20 years, that I now get my pension from the Coast Guard. I get my pension from my savings, and I also get Social Security. I think it should be equal if the Maine employees they worked and paid in that system, they ought to get paid for that, and they should get paid for Medicare. Because they earned it.
Yeah, I'll just add real quickly. I'm familiar with the military side of it as well. It's called concurrent receipt. And the DFW and American Legion and others are really fighting whenever Congress tries to do this, because you can earn retirement in the military and then also be hurt in combat and have a service-connected disability, and trying to say that they have them offset when you actually earn them separately. It's analogous to exactly what's happening to people like my father. That's why I was going to chime in on the personal story, because they stated all the facts. No, it's fine. We're all in agreement on it. But my dad taught at Sanford High for 35 years, and he's brought this up to me several times. But it's a federal issue, and it's important to us because we have so many people in Maine on fixed incomes. The broader issue, I think that we all need to be talking about. This is the first time we've all been up here. It's kind of neat. But the whole fact that we have a whole generation of people that are coming of age when pensions are going away. Very few people in my generation have one. It's 401ks now, and we need to find more ways where people can have a income when they retire. So that's going to be important.
I think everybody's done a great job laying out the nuts and bolts of it, and I agree with all of that. I guess so I would sort of enlarge it and just say, well, why is it that the government is screwing the employees? Because that's what's happening. Like Diane's was the most succinct description. My mother was a school teacher too, so she had a similar situation. Why? Who was it that did that to them?
Ronald Reagan, 1985.
That actually explains it pretty clearly. And I'd say the governor of Maine, if I were the governor, I would say we're going to do away with that to the extent that we can. We're going to work with whoever, our federal delegation, whoever's there is going to be dealing with me as governor, and we're going to say, I'm here for the people of Maine, not for the federal government or anybody else.
All right, so you guys have been really good on time, so we're going to sneak in another question because there were a few of it. We're going to start this one actually with Adam, and then Patrick will take our last question kickoff. So, Adam and other candidates, how would you answer the question of healthcare in Maine, especially with such an aging population? Universal, Maine care expansion, changes in Medicare. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the hardest. They had an article recently. There are 200 people apparently running for governor in 18th. Not in Maine.
It just feels that way.
But the hardest thing, but the article said essentially the hardest thing for everybody, if you're speaking honestly, running as a candidate for governor, is to come up with your health care plan, because so much of what happens on the federal side is dependent upon it, and they haven't gotten their act together.
Right.
So that's just a fact. I have 4 priorities for the health care. Number 1, have everybody covered. We absolutely have to have everybody covered in this state. Number 2, special emphasis on rural access to health care. We're seeing hospitals and areas throughout the state where that's shutting down. Number 3, affordable prescription drugs. We have the oldest population in the country here, and we have to address that. And lastly, addressing the opioid crisis, which is such a huge part of that. It's so frustrating to hear our governor tout Vermont as the example of how to respond to the opioid crisis when they used Medicaid expansion funds in order to do it. But the irony of that statement is missed on him. But those are my 4 priorities in order to address it.
So I think absolutely we need universal health care, and it is true that we are so dependent on what the federal government is doing, but we just have to start doing it. We have got to, and I don't want to keep ringing the same bell, but why don't we have universal health care in this country? The corporate health care that goes in, and they're the ones who stop it every single. I'm sure you saw all those lists on Facebook and everywhere else of the amount of money that each of the people in the Health and Human Services Committee naturally got from healthcare corporations, right? We have universal single-payer health care. We have it for people over 65, and we have it for people who for low-income folks. So number one, the expansion of Maine Care on this November's ballot, 100%. It is criminal and morally wrong that we didn't do it 4 years ago when they were spending 100%, when the federal government was giving us 100%. We have to do it. And then we have a governor who says we should cut off 19 and 20-year-olds off of Medicaid, the very ones who are most likely to be in the opioid crisis. So then we have to look at, so it's everyone in the middle, right? All of us in the middle, right? Who are the only ones without single-payer universal health care. So we have got to look at the role that insurance companies play, because that is where we lose millions and millions of dollars every single year out of your pocket, my pocket, the state pocket, and if we can figure out how to get that out, then we'll be able to cover everybody spending the same amount of money. Yeah.
I would support expansion of Maine Care. I did support when I was in the state senate, and it was one of those nasty vetoes that we couldn't override, and we missed by one vote. And we worked. I keep looking at John because we worked really hard on it, all of us, and the Democrats in the Senate. Yeah, I mean, it was the biggest issue and the most frustrating issue for me when I was in the state senate. And so, if I'm elected governor, a couple things are going to happen before then. This fall, Maine Care expansion is going to happen. I believe. I think it's going to pass the referendum, and then it's going to probably suffer the same fate that these last year's referendums did. So we'll have one session where it's going to get probably overturned or put back again because the governor's going to veto it. So then, when I'm inaugurated in January of 19, then we can start over. We can then expand it, and we'll still be at 90. We'll still be getting huge money from the federal government. The money coming from the hedge fund billionaires and medical device manufacturers. That's where most of that federal funding comes from, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. And right now, it's still going into the federal government, so other people in the country are getting it, not us. Let's get that. It's $400 or $500 million a year, and it would cost us about $50 million a year to get that $400 or $500. That's just smart business. Let's expand Maine Care.
Everybody get a chance?
Go ahead.
As I indicated earlier, on my website, Eisenhart for governor, I've got a master's degree in healthcare. I've got 20 years work experience as a CEO in the healthcare field. I understand what it takes, and I've proven it to myself and other people, that we can reduce the cost of hospital and nursing home care through home health and expansion of home health. As I mentioned earlier, $66,000 to put somebody in a nursing home. If we paid those aides, those nurses' aides, we train them as nurses' aides, they did light housekeeping and so forth, in the home in every community in the state, and paid them $20 an hour, and they were able, out of the 10 people they'd seen a given week, if they could save just 2 from winding up in a nursing home, would still save $100,000. So I'm for all the other programs, but my plan is prepared to deal with those Republicans are going to say, well, how are you going to pay for it? You're going to take money out of our pockets and put it in some welfare cheats and all that garbage. I want to just basically say, you guys have been wasting money on institutional care. When you could take that elderly woman that's malnourished and not allow her to develop pneumonia and winding up in a nursing home or a hospital, okay? Or watching out for just a simple thing like fall supervision of medication and all the rest of that. If we could prevent that, just 2, we could save $100,000 per person. So my plan, I buy the other stuff. I'm all for universal health care, I'm all for all care. But in this current administration that we have, that is going to be an uphill slog. And the way I would fight that as governor is I would deal it on conservative fiscal arguments. Thank you.
If the referendum doesn't pass for some reason, if the legislature does not take action, bill number 1 under the Mills administration, as your governor, will be expansion of Maine Care for Maine people. I was on the Appropriations Committee for 4 years and we dealt with the destruction of the non-categorical program, which covered people who were seriously ill with cancer, with diabetes, with heart disease, and the Republicans took them off of health care. That was a crime.
Yes.
And I would continue to negotiate better prices for pharmaceutical drugs. I drafted a bill that is now pending, carried over in the legislature, to go after the drug companies for price gouging and to make them disgorge the information that causes them, like the Mylan company, to increase the price of the EpiPen by 600% in just 3 years. That's the kind of thing I want to do. In the meantime, before all that happens, I would fully fund the substance abuse treatment centers and make sure every emergency room in Maine has Suboxone and a certified Suboxone provider, so that the people who are revived with Narcan have immediate help and can make intelligent, informed decisions to get help and have that help paid for.
All right, so
Laura, she didn't answer.
Diane
Oh,
is
right.
And she's against universal care.
Oh, you said that.
So what we've seen in the federal debate, look, the Affordable Care Act is great. I'll fight to the end to protect it, but we all know that it does have challenges, right? That's what happens when you try to fix a private system that is driven by profit. The Republicans had their chance to fix a private system driven by profit, and they couldn't do it. You know, I was there in D.C. at the moment when we thought that we were going to lose it, and people just started showing up to the Capitol, and we thought that we were going to lose healthcare that night. And I got a chance to speak, and they said the word Maine, and the whole place erupted, because Maine's resistance. Look, I think Senator Collins deserves the credit for that vote and for standing strong. I do, and we should give her credit for that. But she should. But let's be clear that it was the Maine resistance. It was us that forced her to take that position. It was the Maine resistance that
Every day.
Right. But what we've learned is that neither system is going to work, because you can't fix a system that is built on profit, that is built on hidden costs. You cannot ask your doctor what your hip surgery is going to cost. Now, when I walk into a car to buy a car, I look at the price tag and I know what it is. I don't ask for it 3 months down the line after I've driven it off the highway, off the lot. So we need to make sure that we have single-payer health care. We have a health care system in this country that works. It's called Medicare. We need to make sure that it's Medicare for all ages. There is no excuse. It is going to be incumbent upon us. And if the Maine resistance can protect health care for the entire country, then gosh darned it, we're going to make sure that every single Mainer gets their health care and that it is paid for appropriately.
all right, so we got one last question. How's everybody doing? Looking pretty tired, but wide-eyed, which is good. Possible. So this question, we're going to start with Patrick. It's my personal favorite. I've been organizing for the party in Maine for a long time, and it's a kind of concern that's been constant, and I'm going to amend it a little bit. So what message will you have for the voters to avoid the trap that the national Democratic candidates fell into last year? So this is kind of this is a messaging question. This is a how do we avoid being the anti-Republican, I guess. So let's hear your concerns or your thoughts on messaging, how you can correct that in the party.
Well, first thing I want to say, I'm the least experienced, political experienced candidate out there. I've had no political experience. And if elected, every one of these guys are going to be on my cabinet. I don't know if you've heard this before, but I'd recommend everybody, and this is going to sound kind of like a 9/11 conspiracy. How many people here have read Dark Money by Jane Mayer? Okay, I would encourage all of my colleagues to get a copy of that, because I do believe that everything that's happening here in Maine, that's happening in Wisconsin, that's happening in Kansas, and about 30 other states, has been run according to the bill mills that take place, funded by the Koch brothers, Charles and David Koch. They have been undermining our country since 1980. They are against Medicare, they're against Medicaid, they're against food stamps, they're against anything having to do with social welfare. They don't want a regulation from EPA. And just think about all the stuff that LePage has been doing against Medicaid, against solar, because the Koch brothers are in the fossil industry. They have more money invested than both the Democratic and Republican Party. So what I'm suggesting to everybody here, and as you decide who you're going to vote for, try to get a copy of that book and see how that works, what their agenda is. Or if you don't want to do that, just Google what do the Koch brothers want? Obama warned us about those guys. Bernie warned us about those guys. But every time I start talking about the Koch brothers, I get this blank look. Or you're this suspicious look. What are you, conspirators? Conspirator? But I'll tell you, if you get done reading that book, or you get an audible copy of it, or just go ahead and Google Dark Money by Jane Mayer. It'll scare the hell out of you. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but I did want to get that out there.
Great, no, that's good. So what message will you have for the voters? We'll just keep it going right down the line then. And once again, this is in reference to avoiding maybe past traps we've fallen into.
Right, and you're talking about messaging for Democrats in the Democratic primary, right?
Or in the general. This is
carrying forward into the general.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it comes back to what I touched on at the beginning when I was up here speaking, and it's the common values that we share. I'm a scientist, so I did science and population surveys for wetlands and that sort of thing. So I think of the whole state as the larger population, and this room and the people in it as a subset of that population. That if you sample this room, and I've done that to a certain extent tonight, what I see and what I hear from people are the same people that I've grown up with in my family all these years, all these generations. That all of you and all of them have worked really hard to get where we are. And we've worked hard for generations. And it used to be the generations that worked hard actually got ahead. And part of the reason that happened was that everybody shared in the prosperity together as Americans in democracy. But over the last generation or so, starting with trickle-down economics under Ronald Reagan referenced earlier, that's where that started to change. Trickle-down doesn't work. That's why we have the 1%, because they keep getting more and the rest of us don't. If you give someone a 1% tax break and they make $100,000, that's trickle-down. They keep that $1,000. They don't go hire somebody with that. They put a payment on a boat or something. That's what the rich people do. And so the rest of us don't get that money that we could all share. That's the message for Democrats, is trickle-down economics has hurt us for the past generation, and we need to move away from that and support one another in doing that.
All right.
Yeah, next, yeah.
I think the message is, you matter, we care, we're going to come together, we're going to move Maine forward on health care and protecting our environment for our children and our grandchildren, to have jobs that pay real wages, that we can live on, that restore the middle class, and that as Mainers, we're going to make sure that not only we're okay, but our neighbors are okay, our parents are okay, our grandparents, our kids, and our grandkids. We can do this, we can get this done. We are amazing, extraordinary, ordinary people. When we come together, there's nothing we can't do.
I think sometimes we look at people like Governor Trump. Who hasn't done that, right? So I think when we think about folks like that, a lot of times we think, well, we're not them, then you should vote for us. But I think we make that mistake sometimes. We're not talking about what it is we're going to do. And what's really hurt us a lot of times, what the Republicans are very good at, is they take complicated issues and they give a short, concise, and wholly inaccurate answer. And this happens everywhere. You see in the diners throughout the state, people just say, oh, okay, I've been to some of these town hall meetings. We need to start talking about what it is we're going to do. And it needs to be talking about jobs. Better jobs, the best jobs in America, right here in Maine. That's really what it's going to come down to. Everything is tied into that, whether it's our education, our health care, everything else. We need to talk about how we're going to help the rural areas, the mill towns, and start going through and talking with people proactively, one-on-one, in these conversations on what it is and how our policies are going to help affect their lives. Diane, thank you. She's taking better care of my kids than I am.
My message hasn't changed in a decade. It's been very clear, concise, and this happens to be the first year where it's welcome. I've just been a consistent progressive, very bold. I'm going to say something super controversial, which is not shocking, I'm sure, to folks who know me. I've never been more proud of my country. Not the administration, not the president, certainly not our governor. But I have never been more proud of our country. Throughout history, The greatest advancements toward enlightenment have come out of the darkest moments, and we are in one of those darkest moments, right? But for those of us that marched in the Women's March, either here or in D.C., we saw a light shining so brightly. For those of us that have been out there in the streets on the resistance, when the Muslim ban went up, I organized to get people that the entire Portland Jetport was filled with people. We had refugees and asylum seekers telling their story about why this ban was false. We have been under a leadership regime where it is about divide and conquer, it is about demonizing, and that's not what we do. We lift people up. We lift all boats. We recognize that when one of us is oppressed, everyone is oppressed. That's the message that's going to carry the day. That's the message that's winning right now, and it's not just a message. It's just some cold, hard truth.
As Attorney General, I've campaigned all across the state in all 16 counties and helped get people elected, other good Democrats. And how do we do that? We find common ground with independents, Republicans, and Democrats in all areas of this state. That's what I'm about, finding common ground. That's how I got elected 4 times to the legislature in a Republican independent district. Not an easy thing, sometimes winning close elections. But I'm about winning, and I'm about getting the job done. Pat mentioned the book Dark Money. I've met Mrs. Meyer, and I've read the book. And we know that Mary Mayu is going to does have, Koch brothers money. She has it now. When you see her a year from now, you won't recognize her. She won't be the person we know she is. They'll dress her up like she's going to her first communion. She's all LLB. It's a different Mary Mayu than we saw her as commissioner for 6.5 years. I'm the one who can beat Mary Mayu. I can get the job done and get this state started on the right track again.
That's it for question time. So, Tom Packard's going to make an announcement, but real quick, another round of applause. You guys are great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.